Hello, everyone. I'm Anna from GreenGeeks, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Missing E, Why Your Content Isn't Ranking and How to Fix It, with Pam Cronin, President of Pan Am Marketing and Stealth Search and Analytics. So we're so happy to have you here again, Pam. We're excited about today's webinar. Really quick, I want to say a couple of words about GreenGeeks for those of you who may not be familiar with us, who may be watching this video on YouTube. We're a 300% green energy web hosting provider, which essentially means we put back 3 times the amount of energy we consume into the grid in the form of renewable energy. And we have been recognized by the US EPA since 2009 as a Green Power Partner. We offer share hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, and dedicated server. Also, we plant a tree for every hosting account we provision. And we recently reached 50,000 trees planted through our partnership with a global reforestation nonprofit, One Tree Planted. So now, moving on to the webinar, a few housekeeping items. If you come up with any question during the presentation, could you please put them in the Q&A? So Pam will be answering them at the end of her presentation. And you're always welcome to chat in the chat room. Just remember to select everyone if you want everyone to see what you're discussing. And we want this to be an interactive experience, so we want to hear your thoughts. And also, we are recording this presentation, so if you have to step away from your computer for any reasons, don't worry, we'll send you a recording in the next couple of days. And finally, we have enabled live transcription, so you now have the ability to enable them during the webinar by clicking on the show captions icon. So now, a couple of introduction. I'm going to introduce from our team today, from GreenGeeks team, Erica Barbosa, who will be assisting us with the chat and the Q&A. Hi, Erica, welcome. Do you want to say hi?
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. I am Erica Barbosa. I am from Costa Rica. Today, I'm going to be assisting the chat. Hope you enjoy today with Pam. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Erica. I'm going to say a few words about Pam. Pam is the owner of Pan Am Marketing, LLC, and Stealth Search and Analytics. She's a widely recognized expert in SEO, PPC analytics, and AI. Since founding her agency 15 years ago, Pam has established herself as a leading voice in the industry with recognition as one of the top 10 women in SEO and features in 6 books, numerous podcasts, and several major media outlets. Armed with a marketing MBA and over 2 decades of industry experience, her focus is on helping brands maximize their visibility across both search engines and AI chatbots. So welcome, Pam. Would you like to say hi and start your presentation?
Hello, thank you for having me on another awesome GreenGeeks webinar. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure everyone can see that all right. Let me put it in present mode. How's that? How do slides look?
Great. Beautiful.
Awesome. All right. So let's get into it. We got lots to talk about today. So welcome to the missing E, why your content isn't ranking and how to fix it. What we are going to go over today includes what Google cares about more than the proportion of AI written words to human written words, how to use science to optimize your content for that factor, and how to check your content for that factor. You can download these slides on my website at pamandmarketing.com/slides, or just go to the homepage, go to resources and slides. It will be there on the event page for this webinar. I just uploaded them a moment ago, so if you don't see them, hit refresh and you should see them for download. Okay, let's get into it. So I am, to be honest, sick and tired of hearing everybody debate on, does Google care about AI written content? How much is safe? How much is not safe? And just this all back and forth, like, oh, well, as long as it's 50% or more or 70% or more human written, then it's okay. All these studies, I just wrote a blog article, like picking apart 4 different major studies that were done that are like, yes, it's safe. No, it's not. The studies are so flawed. They're basically poorly disguised advertisements for AI content detection tools, which have their own flaws, like beyond belief. So this was just like driving me crazy. And I'm like, Google is telling us exactly what they want. Why is no one listening. But then I really understood when I started to think about it, like Google's telling us what they want, but they aren't quantifying it or specifying it clearly enough. And that's what led me down this path of research that led me to bring this information to you today. So, like I just said, everyone's saying, is AI content, AI written content good for SEO, bad for SEO? Does it work well for SEO? Yes, no, yes, no. Wrong question. Drop it completely. It's entirely missing the point. What I think you should focus on instead, and I think what the research is pointing to, is that the correct question is, or the correct thing to focus on, is that Google doesn't explicitly punish AI generated content. They've told us that over and over again. What they punish is hollow content. So whether you write hollow content with your own hands or with AI, that's not what Google wants. So it can seem very logical though. AI tends to produce kind of hollow or bland content. So it can seem very logical. Too much AI in my content means Google won't rank it. Google doesn't want hollow. AI makes hollow. Okay, that does indeed make some sense. But the reality is actually the inverse. And this is what Google has been telling us. And we're going to get better today at quantifying exactly how much of it we're putting in our content. It's the human experience angle. The reality is the inverse of what everyone's focusing on. Everyone's focusing on how much AI, how much AI, how much AI. What you need to turn away from that immediately and focus on how much human experience have you talked about in your content, how much humanity. So forget about how much AI, start focusing on how much humanity. But that doesn't mean hollow written words by human fingers. So we're going to get into this more. So basically, immediately after ChatGPT came out and people started fire hosing the internet with bland AI written hollow content, immediately Google revised their EAT acronym, which they had for a long time, and added another E to it. So for a very long time, they've been telling us to demonstrate in our content expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. But now they added this new E, which is experience. They want you to talk about your own real world human experience as a person or a team of people on this planet. And that's because they don't want to rank this hollow content, and everyone's pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. And they just straight up told us right away, talk about your real world human experience. They never told us X% of human content versus X% of AI content is okay. No, what they did is this right here. They updated their quality rater guidelines, which are the human testing guidelines that human Google testers use to evaluate how well the algorithm is working. Algorithms are working. And so basically, this is what the algorithms are geared to do. And I took a screenshot of not all, this is not even all, this is most, but not all of the areas that they revised that quality rater guidelines document to talk about human firsthand experience. So they're clear, crystal clear in what they want from us. They want us talking about our real world human experience. They don't want us focusing on percentage of AI words versus percentage of human words. Have you touched upon your own experience and brought your own perspective to the content? And this is really important in this era of AI-powered search. Traditional web search now has AI at the top and pretty much fully integrated into it at this point. If we can say the word traditional, chatbots like ChatGPT have now integrated web search. So these two things have become one thing, which is I'm referring to as AI-powered search. All of this, whether it's a chatbot with search added, or a search engine with chat added, whatever, they're all powered by LLMs, large language models. And all LLMs are geared to find information from reputable sources, meaning not other AI summaries, real firsthand human sources of expertise and information. They are trained specifically not to cite, not that they don't accidentally, but they're engineered towards not, or engineered away from citing as a source any content that's just a summary written by another LLM. So they're on the hunt all the time for these original insights. Again, not a hollow, bland article written with human fingers. These original insights that only a human can bring to the world. AI can actually be pretty good at the EANT, the original EAT, which is why Google had to revise it, because it can demonstrate expertise. It can sound very authoritative, and it can give citations to build trust of where it got its information from. But in that citation finding process, these LLMs are engineered towards find the original firsthand human expert that gave this insight, this information. It is literally impossible to be considered that original source of information if you're just churning out content from another LLM. So one LLM doesn't want the content from the other LLM. I mean, if you use it to fill in some blanks, check grammar, sure, fine, whatever. But what they're on the hunt for is this original insight from actual humans on this planet. And one important thing to understand about this is that although the AI overviews at the top of search with Google, Bing, whatever, although that may look like it is presenting you web results and then summarizing them for you, that's actually not the order in which it happens. They actually answer the user's query from, they meaning the LLMs powering the AI overviews. They actually answer the question first from their own general knowledge, and then go look for websites to link to back up each point that it made. So it's an answer and then find backup info. So again, your website is a candidate for being that cited source of real world, original, firsthand human insight. You got to remember to put it in the content. So again, I've kind of hammered on this point already. You can write your content 100% with your fingers and have it still lack enough of this new E, this vitamin E, I'm calling it, in order to rank well. You know, Captain Experience here, our superhero, is just sick over reading this hollow content, whether it's AI written or human written. So in order to succeed in this era of AI-powered search, we need to flip this whole how much AI is okay to put in my content question completely on its head. Say to yourself, say, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Remind yourself, it doesn't matter how much AI. It matters how much human experience. But, and as I just said, that is like put that in your brain, you know, every day. I find myself doing it. I really do. I'm like, I use AI to even just proofread a piece of content that I wrote completely myself. I get like this nervousness, like it's like we're just trained to like, AI is bad for SEO. And yes, to be honest, I preached that for the first 3 years after ChatGPT came out until I realized we're all focusing in the wrong direction. So focus away from how much AI and towards how much human. So how exactly, though, do we do this? What exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about just writing in first hand, like first person perspective, like I and we? Are we talking about starting every paragraph or every article with, in my 15 years of doing XYZ? No, they're looking for more than that. And we're going to get into exactly what they're looking for and how they're looking for it. But real quick, a crash course in search engine history will help us understand how all this evolved. I have been doing, I hate to admit this at this point, I've been doing SEO for over 20 years now. That's a screenshot just for fun of one of the first iterations of my website, a much younger, less experienced me, but still, you know, latched right on to trying to understand all this stuff. So it's been a minute. And I have seen some things. So what SEO used to look like is back when websites were just HTML code, just stuffing as many keywords into that meta keywords tag as we possibly could think of. And yes, that is a real disk of my own website from was actually from 97. I backed it up in 1998. So yeah, that's in some ways the good old days when things were so simplistic. But like the level of sophistication from that to me sitting here today preaching to you that keywords are not enough anymore. You have to talk about these real world lived situations in your content. Just goes to show how much search has evolved, the technology behind it. So I've seen endless search engine algorithm updates, endless changes to the industry, but I really can distill it down into three kind of very distinct phases. So the first one is that that level of simplicity of the meta keywords tag. This is a picture of Larry and Sergey when they started Google, literally in the garage. If you look in the back of the white, you can see it's a garage that they're sitting in. They rented a garage to start Google. It's wild to think of that this has happened, that this has evolved in that time to what it has, but it has. So this was a simple word matching engine. It didn't know what things were. Fun flashback to what Google looked like when it launched in 1998. Yes, it's been that long. It's crazy. So it didn't know things. It just knew words. It was a word matching engine. And so it was nearly impossible for it to tell the difference between the word apple when referring to a fruit or apple when referring to a computer. It's funny, when I first made this slide, I was like, or Apple when referring to a phone. Then I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think the iPhone was a thing in 1998 yet, but they had computers. So I changed that to computer, but it didn't know. Apple was Apple. It didn't know what one thing was versus another, a fruit versus a computer. So I'm referring to that as level one of search engine sophistication. And what content looked like back then was gross. It was just keyword stuffed garbage, but it worked. And yes, we did bold and underline all the words because that did actually carry some emphasis for some time. So, but thankfully those days are over. Like I said, good old days in one way, simplicity. From a human that has to consume content perspective, I am glad those days are over. Although it's shocking how much you still see this out on the web sometimes. But search engines eventually, quite some time ago at this point, evolved to become smarter and use, AI feels like a new thing, but like they've actually been using the machine learning variation of AI in the background of search for a long time. And so machine learning was introduced into the algorithms, and search engines became able to know what things are and understand the relationships between them. Like, okay, an apple, it can be a fruit. It can also be a brand of another thing, which is a computer, or at this point, a phone, or a tablet, whatever. It can actually understand what these different things are and the relationships between them. This is when the knowledge graph became a thing. So now at level 2, search engines have the sophistication to understand that a brand is a thing. It's the name of a company or a product. A brand is related to other things, including logos, slogans, products, core values, etc. Brand can belong to a product, a company, or an individual. Branding is a verb, the action of creating a brand strategy and its associated assets, and examples of brands are Apple, Google, Microsoft, etc. It can actually kind of know all these things now. So at this point, it became kind of required of us website content creators to write more compelling and intellectual, intelligent content, ensuring that we naturally touched upon all aspects of a thing. That's when Google started to talk about itself as a topical match engine, as opposed to a keyword match engine. So it became very important to demonstrate you are covering your topic holistically, comprehensively. This is basically when secondary keywords became a thing, and we started optimizing pages for more than just one single primary keyword. It now had single or several primaries plus all these different secondaries that we wanted to make sure we touched upon to show comprehensiveness. So level 2 content started looking like basically what we're familiar with reading and producing on the web, like a nice comprehensive article, very intelligent, very comprehensive. And like, unfortunately, this was fine for a while until AI started mimicking it at scale, at big scale, and fire hosing the internet with it. And so AI is pushing out this level 2 content all day, every day. Probably by the time I finished that last sentence, like I don't even know how many AI generated articles just hit the internet. Like it's the AI agents are doing it by themselves. Like it's not just humans using AI. Like there are AI robots that are just producing the content themselves with no human oversight. So the point is the web is absolutely saturated with level 2 content at this point. It is just there's no way to rise above if that's what you're still writing. And at this point, search engines have now reached level 3 of their understanding, of their sophistication. And this means that they now understand the entire full meaning of all sentences, not just this is a thing, this is related to another thing, all the context behind it, all the sentiment, the intent, basically to the same degree a human does. The way our brains process language and incoming words, whether we hear them or see them, read them, that is the level of sophistication that search has reached. It understands all of it. So, and again, these level 3 algorithms are they're on the hunt, especially more than ever, they're on the hunt for evidence that you have provided original human insight that you gained through real world experience, that you really know what you're talking about because of things you've done, experiences you've had, expertise you have gained through specific experiences. So this is what level 3 content now looks like. I won't read the whole thing, but just for example, when we were developing a brand, we had a choice to focus on this client's sourcing of the rarest coffee beans or creating an immersive in-store experience. Our custom survey data showed this. Our market research, though, showed that. So we chose to, we grappled with this decision and, storytelling, basically, you're painting a picture of when and how you got this expertise or used this expertise in the real world. And so, we chose to prioritize the experiential branding, knowing that it meant, we were foregoing a little bit of this because we projected it would yield that. That is what I'm talking about when I'm saying demonstrate real world expertise in your content. And I'll give you a couple different flavors of how we can do this. It doesn't all need to look exactly like this, but this type of content is really the only way I can envision that any content could rise above the noise that is being produced all day, every day by AI bots writing AI content that AI does not want to cite as a source. So here's where you can rise above. And this is I'm about to go into the exact tactics, which, I've relatively recently started telling our clients I've been experimenting with them too, of course, but telling our clients to implement. And this is a real world case study of a level 3 rewrite. So a lot of times we're encouraging our clients these days to rewrite their content and refresh it, make it more up to date, even more comprehensive. And it always provides a bit of a lift, but this level 3 lift that we're seeing when an old piece of content is rewritten to include this level 3 quality has been quite impressive so far. And I'm really looking forward to putting together some studies at greater scale of the difference between the performance of level 2 and level 3 content. But early indications are very good. So how exactly do we do this? And, in short, you can say storytelling, but ever since Google came out with this new I have been agonizing, and I mean agonizing, over finding a way. The nerd part of my brain needed a way to measure just how much of that E factor is in a piece of content so we could feel comfortable that we checked the box for that algorithm that's looking for this. And what that led me to, like I said before, writing in first person, it's a good start. It means most likely you are telling some kind of story or original perspective, but not necessarily. It's not enough on its own. I can write a whole article with I and we and our, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I put any actual original insight into it. So since that won't reach the level that we're aiming for, which is to become the original source of 100% unique experience-driven insights that search engines and AI chatbots are looking for, we need to go deeper. And I believe I finally found the answer. Knowing that natural language processing is, I'm trying not to get too boring into the weeds of the computer side of things here, but it's the context behind how you need to demonstrate to these search engines that you've talked about a certain thing. Because the way that they understand words is using natural language processing. So basically, they've been trained to kind of think like we think. And there's been a lot of research actually into how the human brain understands words and how it thinks and how it knows things. And so there are word clues that can be identified when a human is sharing memories of lived experience and the knowledge that they acquired from that experience. So basically, this field of study is called cognitive linguistics. And I promise I won't go too deep into the sciencey side of things. But like I just said, basically it's the science behind and the studying of how language links to knowledge or concepts, language, words, to concepts, and to bodily experience. So when things happen to us, we talk about them in a certain way. And I truly believe this is the way that Google is looking for this new E, because basically it has no other way. This is the way that they were trained, these LLMs, whether it be what Google's using, which is Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever, they were trained to understand language and the meaning of language and to see connections between language and bodily experience. Bodily is a weird name to use for it, but that we are human, we have bodies. This is where we're on a planet and is looking for those word clues. So I uncovered a wide variety of these word clues, these linguistic signals that can identify when words are pointing to cognition or knowledge gained from real world experience. But to keep it less sciencey, they all have very scientific names like retrospective epistemic recalibration. I can't even barely pronounce some of them, but they had running themes between them. So I lumped them into 3 simple groups we can all remember and keep in mind when we're writing our content. So here are the 3 flavors of vitamin E. One is stories, but specifically like over the years stories. And I'll give examples of each one of these. So stories that reflect, over time, like the time, really demonstrate that time has elapsed. Not like yesterday I talked to someone and blah, blah, blah. That's the first one. Secondly, pivot points where, something you used to believe or do a certain way changed. I'll give examples of all of this in a moment. And the third category is only the pros would know stuff, like the tried and true theories that you've tested and have worked out, or your own little methods to your madness. So let's get into each one in an example. So like I said, storytelling is probably the simplest way to summarize all of this, and it's incredibly effective, both for humans and for this new E factor. But we do want to make sure we're showing how long we've had this experience. So that's why I nicknamed it Over the Years Stories. But side note, one of the most surprising bits of feedback that I've gotten from people that I've been telling to do this is they're like surprised, they're pleasantly surprised at how good their own content came out. They're like, wow, I didn't realize that I kind of got stuck in this level 2 writing. Like we've almost been trained by search to write very structured, to touch upon all our secondary keywords, even in this new era of AI-powered search, to make sure we include those FAQs at the end that the AI-powered search loves. And it's kind of created this formula that we all go through to produce good quality content, but it gets stuck in level 2. And it's just, that's one of the coolest things that I've experienced by training people on this thus far, is like, they're like, wow, my article came out so much better than I would have normally written it when you encouraged me to include these things. and they enjoy reading their own content more. And well, that will tell you that your target audience will enjoy reading your content more too, if you enjoy reading your own content more once you take it to this level 3. So storytelling is our first category of flavors of vitamin E we can use to bring content to level 3. And again, focus on time span. Like it's fine to mention something, the conversation you had yesterday with your team or last week with a client, but really what, experience is what we're trying to demonstrate here. And we want to show that we have a lot of it gained over a long time. So pick stories that demonstrate just how long you've been doing what you've been doing. Like back in this time when I was at that place doing my thing, doing my professional thing, this situation happened. And it's not just mentioning the times and places. That's a key component, obviously. But really focus on the E, always the E. This is Captain Experience here, a visual to guide you to remember, always bring that E to the table. So yes, mentioning of historical times and places, but don't forget that really what we're focusing on is talking about the experience that you gained. So a couple of different sub-flavors of this flavor. You can talk about rules of thumb. This is one of the ways of showing, like, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this long enough to have, this rule that we live by or that I live by, and very, related to your profession, obviously, that you acquired through long-term immersion in your field. Then there's the sub-flavor of the methods to my madness. These all have similarities, which is why I put them in the same group. But to use as kind of thought prompts, I think it's helpful to think of rules of thumb, the methods to your madness. So telling stories about how your specific methodology, which is completely unique to you as an expert in your field, evolved over time from those standard industry practices that perhaps you followed when you were brand new or that you read in your textbook in college. But now you have your own method to your madness. You have your own way in which you you've discarded some of, the standard way or the textbook stuff, and you have your method now. Talking about that, very, very powerful. And then we have another sub-flavor of this called long-term effects. So basically, stories that describe subtle or secondary or long-term effects of something that really you could have only seen by being in your profession for a long time. Like, after X amount of years of doing things this way, I realized that we really should just tweak this one thing, and then we nailed it. And, better example would be, if, actually, I have a better example. Yes, I did include long-term effects in this one. So example of all of this put together, and this is a personal example from me, would be when I spoke at WordCamp US in 2019, place and time. A woman came up to me after my talk and asked me a very interesting question about a rebranding challenge. Her company, won't go into all the background, blah, 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 background. And then back to the expertise, the vitamin E. I told her about the biotech client I worked with back in 2013 time, and who faced the same dilemma and went with the quick transition approach for their migration. And then here's the long-term effects. I explained that it ended up taking that client 6 whole years to get the new parent brand to the level of SEO visibility that could have been achieved much quicker if they had taken a more gradual approach to merging their sites. So that I saw this evolve over 6 years thing. I saw them struggle over 6 years. That's the long-term effects that I could have only seen after working with them for that long. All right, second distinct flavor of vitamin E are pivot points. This refers to changes in basically beliefs or ways of doing things as a result of your professional experience. So I used to think or believe X or do things this way. But to start with a belief example, I used to think or believe this until that happened, and now I believe that. So explaining a fundamental shift in a professional belief resulting from real world situations. I mean, my own very real example of this is what I've been telling you today, is that I preached for the last 3 years that you should never include any AI in your content at all, just to be safe, do it all by written human fingers. And once I discovered that what they're actually looking for are these linguistic signals of experience, human experience, and seeing it work in the real world, in the content that's performing well with it, I had this belief pivot where I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be such an AI purist and say you cannot put a single AI generated word in your article. I changed my belief to, you know what? You can. You can use it to write the general part of things. Certainly, even a lot of the level 2 stuff that's just going to be background information, as long as you have a healthy dose of that vitamin E on top of it. So that's an example right there of a belief pivot. And then we have procedural pivots. So describing how your approach changed, evolved and changed over time, and how your standard operating procedures have changed accordingly. It's very similar to the method to my madness or rules of thumb type of thing. So you can kind of overlap and use these. But the key linguistic signal that they're looking for here is a pivot, the pivot point. At this point, I changed my belief, or at this point, I changed my process. And then we have paths not taken is also kind of a pivot point. I guess you could think of this as more like the fork in the road type of a story, where you are talking about trade-offs. And, in this situation, I was faced with this path in the road, and ultimately I chose to take this path rather than that path. And my reasoning behind that decision was, and the outcome, long-term effects, good one to pair there. And the outcome was XYZ. So paths not taken, or forks in the road, you can think of it. So here's the story I actually just gave. My example: I used to be AI generated content purist. I felt that no amount of AI generated content was safe. I maintained this belief for 3 years. But I specifically state, but after intensive research and experimentation, my belief then pivoted. And I now believe that it can be safe to use AI to help generate content, so long as it contains enough of that E to ensure that it will absolutely shine in comparison to the typical bland, generic, repetitive, purely AI generated content, or even human generated bland level 2 content. But that's just within this example, something that I hope sticks with you is the absolutely shine part. That's what you want your piece to come out like, every piece. And yes, it's a lot of work. This is not easy. It can be simple to understand now, I hope. Simple does not mean easy, though. So it's hard work, but that's the goal, is to rise above the AI generated fire hose and absolutely shine. Look at a piece of content when you're done with it and be like, this is amazing. There's no way AI could have generated this. This is just a masterpiece. So hopefully that sticks with you. All right, third and final flavor is only the pros would know stuff. So this involves demonstrating your deep understanding of complexities and dependencies. So these are the linguistic signals buried in here, are complexities and dependencies that you learned through extensive firsthand experience. So I nicknamed it only the pros would know. These are the things not taught in the classroom, not in the handbook or the textbook of standard industry practices. This is the stuff you learn in the field, and only learn in the field. So talking about complexities, in-depth dependencies, how one concept impacts another concept, or complex decision-making challenges, like a couple of the examples about, I gave already about a website migration, or the branding decisions, these complex decision-making challenges, and ripple effects, similar to the long-term effects, but specifically talking about butterfly effect type things, where one thing caused another thing, caused another thing. So these complexities, and how, talking about how you fully understand them, is definitely one way of demonstrating the only the pros would know type things. Theory versus reality, talking about the friction point between what you're supposed to do in theory and the real world constraints that get in the way. For example, I have for almost all my SEO years preached that subdirectory is better than subdomain. So always, I would preach subdirectory better than subdomain. But there's a friction there between theory and reality. Yes, in theory, that is always true. However, there's reality, there's real world situations where like that can become, because of two CMSs being in the mix, that can become so cost prohibitive to the client that it doesn't actually make sense for me to recommend that. So that's an example of theory versus reality. Exceptions and edge cases are definitely good ones. There's an exception to every rule, and the more you talk about them and the unique edge cases that you've encountered, the greater you're demonstrating your expertise. Those unique, weird situations you've run into because you are an expert that has been doing this for a long time. That is an excellent way to demonstrate this only the pros would know stuff. And lastly, the point of no return. So this is where you talk about situations where a decision was made or a thing happened, for example, a global pandemic, and the effects were just life-changing or professional life-changing, or there was no turning back. And so explaining how you navigated such situations, for example, I don't know if you're in the real estate industry, like the 2008 mortgage crash situation, talking about how you navigated these complete like no turning back situations demonstrate your battle scars. That's kind of a key word you can keep in mind from the real world, and really it demonstrates how you survived those challenges that other less seasoned professionals would not have or did not. So that's a very powerful one as well. So this is where the example is the textbook says A, but after doing this B number of times, I learned that C factor can arise. And in those cases, you must do D instead. Specific example, the manual says to tighten the bolt to 50 pounds of torque, but after rebuilding 100 of these engines, you learn to stop when you feel a specific sudden give in the wrench. If you rely purely on the gauge or purely on the manual, purely on the textbook, you'll strip the threads. So this is that only the pros would know stuff. So to sum this all up, to prove lived experience, this new E that really should drive everything we're doing now with content generation, to prove your lived experience, your writing has to reflect the reality of doing something in the real world and not just the sterile theory of how something should be done. I think that's a good way of saying it. Like this sterile theory, we can write that with our own human fingers and it's still going to be looked at as sterile or hollow or bland by search engines. So again, turn away from the percentage of AI versus percentage of human written. Does not matter. Forget all your AI content detectors. Throw them out. Save yourself money if you're paying for them. Turn towards, did I talk about the reality of me doing something in the real world? And again, it can be a team. I know some of you have to generate content in a corporate voice. So it can be a team of experts within your corporation. That totally counts. It's the real world experience that you're talking about and the storytelling that matters. So stop sharing just facts. Start sharing the friction, mistakes, and rule breaking that only a human could have gone through. That is AI, LLMs, they can't talk about it. They can say, oh, well, sometimes people see this situation or sometimes, no, say, I saw this or my team saw this back in X date when we were doing X thing for X project because we were experts all the way back then, etc. Lastly, so that's really like, if you take nothing else away, just remember if I had to sum it up in one word, injecting vitamin E into your content so that it will rank better comes down to storytelling. But I hope you remember a few of the specific examples because there are specific linguistic signals they're looking for. So the ones that we just went over can be your, print out these slides or jot it down and keep it in whatever you have open next to you when you're writing. That can be your framework. If you're like me and you want a really quantifiable way to like scan the content and make sure those linguistic signals are indeed in there in a way that the LLMs will understand, I can tell you, like I just said, you're pretty safe to just simply use this as a framework. So keep this next to you when you're writing. But I've also developed a tool because, as an SEO agency, we needed a way to measure. We needed a way to tell the clients, yes, those linguistic signals are in there. And I did not want it to be a subjective way. Like, one team member A thinks that part of that article was enough. And team member B could look at it and say, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's an in-depth story enough. So I created a tool that scans for these specific linguistic techniques and word clues that demonstrate the E. So it's called Contelevate. It's completely and totally free right now. It's just something I'm experimenting with, and I would welcome anyone and everyone to give it a try and give me your pure, honest feedback. So no sales pitch other than something you may find very useful, and if you do, I would love to hear about it. Or if you don't, I'd love to hear about it. But so basically, in there's a level 3 content quality checker tool that analyzes whether your content has those linguistic clues that I just talked about. And it uses LLMs to analyze the content. So it's kind of a sure way of saying, like, did an LLM see those linguistic signals in your content or not? It will tell you, yes, it did, and this is level 3, or no, it didn't. You're still at level 2. And if it didn't, so here's what it looks like. You go to the checker. You can either paste your content in or put a URL in, it'll fetch it. And it will tell you if it did, yes, we see these linguistic signals, and this is therefore level 3 content. And it will tell you what it saw in those categories of over the years stories, pivot points, or real world complexities. If it only sees even one of those, I think that's okay. Obviously, the more the better. But as long as you've included at least one type of these linguistic signals in your content, I would say that it's reached a level of quality that exceeds your average AI generated article. And if you didn't, it will tell you, no, level 2, it's comprehensive. It touched upon all the things that a search engine would want you to touch upon, but your lived experience was not detected in it. And it will give you suggestions, actually, if you did not hit level 2, or even if you hit level 3 and you want suggestions on how to put even more vitamin E into it, you can get suggestions. And if you are a writer who interviews other people, you can put in, like, who is the subject matter expert that you're going to ask to tell you about your lived experience, and it will give you the suggestions. And they look like this. It's just examples. Please do not copy paste them. That's not the point, to put fake stories into your content. Obviously, I wouldn't encourage that. But I think the examples can be very helpful as thought prompts and to prompt someone to think about a similar situation that they actually lived through. And I kind of took that tool and flipped it around, because a lot of people were happy to use it to scan their drafts, and I got good feedback from that initially. But they were like, well, how do I plan content that I haven't written yet? I haven't drafted yet for this. I'm about to go interview this subject matter expert. So I kind of took the tool and flipped it in the other direction too. So there's a second module in there called the Level 3 Content Planner. You can put in what you're going to write about, who you are yourself, if you're kind of interviewing your own self for your own stories, or who you're formally interviewing as the subject matter expert. And you can even put the target audience, and it will generate a content brief that tells you both all of the level 2 things. I know this is small, but you can see down the side, all the level 2 aspects that the search engines would expect you to touch upon, and the level 3 thought prompts and interview questions are in blue in there too. So something you can copy paste or export and take to your interview or take to your own writing session. So that is all of the information that I have to present to you today. Quick FYI, I am doing on Friday, April 3rd, some free AI SEO live website audits. So if you'd like me to pick apart your website in front of a live audience, which I promise I won't be mean about it, I'll be completely constructive, you can sign up for that. But I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to take a breath and we'll see what questions we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Pam. Let me see. There's a few questions, actually. The first one, I'm not really sure how it relates to your presentation, but Donna is asking, how do you change your email address on your web page? Yeah, I guess
I'm not sure that relates to the subject matter of this content. If you are hosted with GreenGeeks, I'm sure you could contact support and they would help you for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve is asking, does the new E that you're discussing also apply when going direct to ChatGPT or Claude to look for some of the same information you would ask Google or other search engines?
So, yes, and it applies in the context of when these LLMs like ChatGPT or Copilot, whichever one you're chatting with, is looking for either experts or companies or websites to back up what it's saying, because that's what they're trained to do, is to refer to things to back up what they're saying, especially if they're searching the web for you. This is where that specifically applies the most. When an LLM, whether it be ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, Copilot, whichever one, if it's searching the web for you, this is where this applies the most. So it's then on the hunt for original human insight to use to back up the generic answer that it already gave.
Okay, thank you. Diane is asking, how long will it take for AI to adopt the same language as it becomes more of what AI is consuming, as AI believes it has these experiences?
That is an excellent question. I had to be honest, I have no idea how long before we hit that. I suppose that will be level 4 of search engine sophistication and a whole new world of humans competing with AI agents that actually do have experience. But thankfully, I don't think we're there anytime soon. At least for the
Not
remainder of
anytime soon.
2026, I'd say we won't have to worry about that.
Good. Christine is asking if we will get the slides of this. I guess, yes, we can include the slides of your presentation in when we send the recording.
Yes, and
Yeah.
if you want to grab them now, they're on my website. If you go to pamandmarketing.com/slides, or just go to the homepage and click on resources and slides.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for sharing that link in the chat. And Andrea is asking, how much of this content is needed? A couple of sentences, paragraphs or more? Can this go into a blog on your site, or should it be on the main pages?
Yeah, excellent question. I kind of hear two questions in there.
Yeah.
So how much is, just full disclaimer, I don't know exactly. That is really, really kind of impossible to know because Google doesn't give out their secret sauce of their algorithms, neither does any other search engine or AI chatbot. So what we do know is that they use NLP, natural language processing, and they're looking for these clues. I could not tell you how much is enough, but I will tell you, I will encourage you to think of flipping that kind of thought on its head a little bit too, and think about, well, how impressed would a human be with the stories that you put in the content or the experience you talked about in the content? So don't only focus on the LLMs. Humans absolutely love storytelling, and they love that unique, like kind of behind the scenes type of insight. So, think about it. If you were a human reading this article, would you be sufficiently impressed? If so, then I think you've probably checked the box for the AI-powered search, as well as checking the box for impressing your human target audience.
Yes.
So that's the how much. Now, as far as the type of content, also excellent question. Primarily, I would say this applies to your blog or article type content. So I don't want to say more so than sales pages. I do think that it would be very effective to include some version of this in your sales page content, like your service pages or your product pages. But obviously you don't have as much room there to go into full-blown stories. So, I guess maybe pepper it in is what I'm doing in my sales content versus in the blog content, like going full out with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kier is asking, how can one add experience to a B2B website?
B2B. So I mean, it's really the same across B2B or B2C. But I saw another question. I lost it now in the chat. But similar question. Here it is. Lisa asks, if you write for your company and have not the human experience yourself, but you're writing for a company, how can you get the story in there. So I think that's kind
Yeah.
of the same as like the B2B angle, maybe. And that's tricky. I never said this was easy. I said, I hope it's simple to understand after going through this webinar, but it's not easy. And, you know, writers will definitely struggle to extract this information out of the team members that they need to extract it from to get it in there. But that's really what it's about. It's interviewing human subject matter experts within the company if you can. I know that's not always possible. If that's not within reach, case studies are excellent. Also, that's a way of showing human, teams of humans, how teams of humans did things within a corporation. And typically I've found in our like B2B SaaS type clients, like there's a willingness to produce case studies. So if you can't get interviews are great. If you can just sit down with a subject matter expert and say, tell me about a time when you changed your belief, or tell me about a time when you were involved with a project and you took a certain road and it had long-term effects. That's awesome if you can do it. But if you can't, I would say defaulting to not purely written case studies. I mean, you still need to write articles that aren't pure case studies, but case study type elements to your articles, if that makes sense. But yeah, I know this is tricky for people to implement in the real world, theory versus reality. And so I welcome individual emails. If you have a very unique situation, I'd love to hear about it and help you brainstorm through it.
Yeah, that's great. Kier is asking, what value to SEO does having multilingual website?
Multilingual is super valuable if your target audience is in multiple regions that speak multiple languages. I'd say more so than ever before, because in the past you could kind of rely on the fact that everyone could use Google Translate, or even like in Chrome it'll auto translate a web page for you. So you could kind of rely on, oh well, my my target audience in X region can just translate my content. But now that search is AI powered and these LLMs are making decisions about which links to give to the users, I'd say actually having a proper multilingual website is more important than ever.
Yeah, it's more important than ever. Kaya is asking, since AI can fake reviews and customer testimonials, how can one make sure to convey, I think she meant convey, true authenticity on e-commerce sites?
Excellent. Yes, that is a very good point. AI can mimic a lot of things, including what seem to be real reviews and what seem to be real people. That is something that the search engines are starting to battle, and they're going to have to battle more and more and more throughout the rest of this year and coming year, where people are creating fake AI personas, or AI is creating fake AI personas and writing. I mean, fake reviews have been around for some time. There's some well-established algorithms for picking those out, but it's really the fake personas that's the new challenge for the search engines to battle. Like, they can make things look very real, reviews, testimonials, and say that it's from a person, and that person, if you Google that person, then you get like real social media profiles and you get like a real looking picture. And that is definitely going to be a challenge it already is, but it's going to grow as a challenge. So how to prove authenticity? Well, is to be authentic, because similar to the way that these LLMs and search engines are looking for these linguistic signals of experience, they're going to be looking for authenticity signals, if they're not already, for personas as well. So make sure you're a real person. We don't have much more in-depth technical information on how exactly they do that now or are going to do that, but just make sure that everything you do is authentic, because believe me, they will be coming up with algorithmic ways more and more and more to identify those fake AI personas and ignore them, or even penalize them.
Yes, absolutely. Diana is asking if she could get the April the 3rd webinar link again.
Oh, that one is on my website under events.
Okay, thank you. And William is asking, is there a quantifiable difference between highlighting the lived experience on a subject you are talking about on a web page article and my lived experience as a writer of the content.
Mm. I think I know what the question is referring to. So if you're a very experienced writer, but you're writing, I don't know, maybe ghostwriting for someone else or writing as one voice on a team or something. I should mention that all of the traditional SEO best practices still apply. This is like the newest layer on top to think about and add to your processes, but all the traditional applies. And part of traditional SEO is having author bios on each article and making it very clear who wrote the article or who's on the team that wrote the article. And so being able to click through to the subject matter expert, read their bio, that's important for the bots the crawlers to be able to do. So it should be unquestionably clear simply by the byline of the article, who wrote it, click on the byline, see a bio, who they are. And so just make sure there's no, ambiguity there.
Yeah. Diane is asking, she's saying, sorry, question cut off from before. Have you seen some real world results when AI pulled up something after you injected vitamin E?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of it. When AI what?
Have you seen some real results where AI pulled up something after you injected vitamin E?
Oh, yes, indeed, for sure. Not to say like we encourage clients to rewrite a lot of their content, and even just refreshing a piece of content with newer or more comprehensive information without the E can help. But we've seen some bigger leaps, notably bigger leaps when rewrites are done and they include the vitamin E. And like I said, I look forward to gathering more data and doing some bigger scale studies on level 2 versus level 3 or E versus no E. But yeah, I have seen early indicators of good success.
Okay. Follow more question. Michael is saying, I work in a highly regulated financial industry where we're not allowed to look forward, or nor are we allowed to be promotional. How do I incorporate the E under these constraints?
Wow, yes. So regulated industries, always tricky for SEO. To be perfectly honest, I don't specialize in regulated industries. Most of our projects are not because of such restrictions. So off the top of my head, I don't have too good of an answer for that, but it's definitely something I'm going to put more thought into. And if you would like to email me with the specific content that you write on the website, I'll look at it and I'll brainstorm about that situation specifically. And so hopefully I can give you a little more thought on that after putting eyes on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Steve, you type into search or direct to ChatGPT to give me a level 3 version of what you cut and paste into the LLM?
You certainly could, and it will create a story for you. It'll be fake unless you have somehow trained it to know all of the human experiences you've ever had and all the memories you've ever had. It will likely be a fake story. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, that would pass my tool. My scanner tool would see the linguistic signals and it would say, yeah, you checked the box. Is it true authenticity that will work with true humans, which are your true target audience in the end? Probably not. I mean, like I can come on this webinar and tell you some of the same level 3 stories that are in my blog articles and really drive home to people who may be thinking about doing business with me that, yes, I did. I can talk about that live to you. It's not a fake story. So yeah, you can do it. And yes, it will pass the checker. No, I do not encourage it. I do think that there are a plethora of other signals that would probably come to light eventually that, that story is not quite corroborated. But, yes, you can. I just, I encourage everyone to remember that real humans are also our target audience here. And true authenticity works very well.
Okay. And then I see a quick little one in the chat. Can you create a detailed prompt for LLMs to ask you questions regarding a certain topic you want to write about? Then based on your responses, it creates a response that satisfies your level 3 content?
Yeah, so I think pretty similar question to the last one that we just did. Yes, absolutely. I would encourage you to, if you're going to do so and use it as thought prompts to give you thoughts about what actual real stories you may want to authentically put in there and to be really authentic. That actually is what the level 3 planner tool that I made does. It asks an LLM, like, if you were looking for real world expertise in an article about X thing, what types of things would you be looking for? And it will give you examples. But like I said, please don't copy paste them and put
Yeah.
fake stories into things. Use this as an opportunity, as a thought prompt for yourself to be like, you know what? I do have this expertise. I really should put this in my content, and so that I can authentically shine as an expert. Because remember, it's actually humans we're still doing business with at this point in time.
Yes.
As of 2026, most of us are still doing business with humans, not their AI agents. That may come, but as of now, we are still trying to authentically impress authentic humans.
Okay, wonderful. Great. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to thank you, Pam. This has been a great presentation. We do love your presentations. And thank you, Erica, for helping out in getting back to the questions and answers here in the chat and in the Q&A. And for everybody, in general, besides your SEO April 3rd, we have also upcoming webinars at greengeeks.com/webinars for in the next few months. And, I think we're good. Everybody's been a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Pam. I love your presentation today.
Great. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to hear that. Thank you again for having me. I have so much fun talking about this stuff.
Yes, thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.